There it goes. Okay, hey guys, good morning. How are you doing today? Sorry for that bump. The camera did not want to turn on for whatever reason, and then I totally gave like Francesca like privileges, like leadership privileges. So if you saw that pop up on your screen, Francesca, that wasn't by accident. My computer was acting weird, and so I had to leave, and so I just assigned you the hosting capabilities. Um, so yeah, so it just flipped back, and now it's working. So. But it's good to see everybody. Good morning. How's everyone doing today? I go ahead and type it in the chat to see how we are doing, but hopefully you're doing well. In a different setting today, I actually came into my classroom, which is the classroom that I normally use during my high school days. And it's basically a Mac lab or a simulated Mac lab of a studio environment. It's pretty cool. I like it. And it's designed to basically be like many other Mac labs, even the one similar to what we have in Rio on campus. It's supposed to basically be like a studio environment or create like a simulation of a studio environment. So you see these Mac computers that are like right behind me. That picture here is an actual painting from Disney Consumer Products. When I was there, they did a remodeling and they threw away these paintings or like these canvas prints that were like all over the walls. And so I grabbed me one of them for free and strapped it on top of my car. And then I pretty much have had it for like almost 10 years. So everywhere I go, wherever I teach, I just put it up on the wall. And as a little reminder, is like, oh yeah, that came from the Disney studios. So always little things that kind of remind me of what it is that we're doing. So it's a cool little conversation piece as well. So I thought that was helpful to say the least. So it's really cool. But yeah, guys, let's kind of jump in. I wanted to go over a little bit of what's happening today. So if we were to look at our calendar for today, objectives for today, according to the calendar, is that we are going to be looking at some basic vector versus bitmap or vector versus raster. So we're going to be learning a little bit about the how computers create images. We're going to actually have a little bit of fun with that today, which is really cool. So we're going to be learning about that. We are now on day 6. So that's kind of nuts that we're already 6 days in, which is pretty wild. And we're also going to be looking at the basic Photoshop tools and just the Photoshop interface. So we will be kind of brushing lightly the surface of the program and just kind of getting started of where we are overall. Okay, so that's kind of where we're heading towards. And we're going to basically just kind of talk a little bit about the basic interface, how a computer creates images, right? And then tomorrow, we're going to be going into the selection tools and techniques, which is literally showing you how to do certain edits using images on the computer. So with Photoshop. So we're actually going to start doing the editing, image edits and things like that. And then on Thursday, we're going to kick off a collage or a career montage, as I like to call it. And that's going to take us into multiple activities moving into the next week. So pretty much the stuff that we had talked about, finally the Photoshop stuff, we're going to kick it off tomorrow with the actual techniques. And then tomorrow, and then the following days going after that, we're actually going to be doing all the exercises and things of that sort and getting real deep into it. So it's going to be really cool. We're finally going to jump into it. And it's gonna be great. So I think everyone's gonna really enjoy it, and it's gonna be finally like putting it to work and applying it and making it happen. So I think it's gonna be pretty cool. So I think everyone's gonna enjoy it, and I think it's gonna be fun for the most part. Okay, so let me go ahead and set us up, and a couple of quick announcements, really quick before I forget, because I don't want to lose track of anything. If for whatever reason you're still having issues with Photoshop and it's not loading, I sent an email to a couple folks in class about like how to fix that. So you definitely want to try to install that like right now. So then that way there's no issues or concerns. Now, The quickest workaround I could say, considering that we're like under 30 days, is you could try to do the free 7-day trial version of Photoshop just to buy you time and get started while we kind of work out some of the details with the emails and things of that sort. So Jolene, I think you had mentioned that you never really got like a Rio Hondo email for the class. You're using your regular email. So we want to see if we can kind of get that going for you. I do want to ask, and maybe Francesca, you can kind of help us out with it. So Francesca, since you've been in the class and you signed up, did you get like a Rio Hondo email way back?
Yeah, I did get a Rio Hondo email, but I did have some trouble trying to find it. So I had to go to the Rio Hondo website and then go to Access Rio, and then at the top right, there should be My Mail, and then I found it from there.
Okay, so then could I trouble you to pull that link up and put it in the chat so then maybe Jolene can kind of click onto that, because she's having an issue. She might actually have an email existing, but let's see if we can pull it up at some point today, and then we'll go in that direction too. Okay. So so Jolene, like the worst come to worst, you can basically do 7 days free, right? And in that time frame. But honestly, I think you'll be okay. Let's wait it out and see what Francesca pulls up with that Access Rio email. We'll try to see if we have a My Mail to that to kind of retrieve the program and get you started there. But we do have like backup plans, right? So that way there's no issues. If that doesn't work, there's a 7-day trial. If that doesn't work, you know, then we could set you up with like a temporary email access. So we'll make it work in that direction and kind of pull it up that way. I think also what we'll do is well, you already have sent me an email. So if you could reply to the email that I sent over to you about 20 minutes ago with your high school email included, then I'll forward that to Wendy, our office coordinator, and then see if she can also help us retrieve or set you up with a temporary passcode there. So there's flexibility. We have a couple of ways to kind of make it work, but we will get you to where you need to be. Okay. And then Francesca's going to help us pull that up so we can retrieve it. So thank you, Francesca, for doing that. We really do appreciate that. Okay. So we'll get you set up. And if anyone else is having issues with Photoshop, definitely now's the time to let me know, because we're going to start today to literally open the program and just basically look at some of the tools. We're not going to use the tools until tomorrow, but we're going to open it and start looking at some of the tools. So that's where we're going to be heading towards. Okay.
Actually, I have a quick question.
Yes, Francesca, go for it.
So I try to go to the Rio Hondo College website, and then I try to click on Access Rio at the top right. But for some reason, it's giving me an error code. I don't know if anyone else is having this issue.
Let's take a look. There might be something going on the opposite side, but let's find out. Okay, Access Rio. So this is where you're trying to go to, right? Let's see, for authentication. Oh, it could be a browser issue. I have Chrome. So let me go ahead and try to put the link in there. And then Jolene, see if you can click onto that and see if that helps. And then let's try realhondo.edu also. Oh, cannot spell. Okay. And then we'll see if we can retrieve that right now and pull that up. Yeah, Access Rio. Yeah, that's the authentication there. So it seems to be pulling up. And we'll see if we can retrieve it that way. So Access Rio. And I have Chrome too, so it should be okay for the time being. So let's see. Well, I'll definitely troubleshoot it a little bit, because I definitely do want to look a little bit at the warm up today and see what we can kind of pull from there. Okay, so we'll take a look and we'll try to make it work and try to build it up. Okay. Okay. So to Photoshop software installed in 2021. We can use 2020 if it's more stable, Myra, but 2021 is the program I'll be kind of referring to. So if it's shutting down, it could be a memory issue on the computer. So we'll try to see software installed. I mean, the information is general enough that 2020 could make it work. So, but normally something like that is like, if when you're installing 2021, you could uninstall 2020 and then kind of go from there, because I think, if I recall, yeah. So let me go ahead and then open this up really quick so I can share my screen. So for example, if you have this launcher, which is the Adobe Manager, this is typically found on your computer when you launch Adobe Creative Cloud. This manager at the bottom will show installed and uninstalled for the computer, right? So let's say, for example, you see on the top of your list here, installed versus uninstalled. You'll see all the installed programs, right? But if you have two Photoshops, then what you could technically do is that you can uninstall 2021 by clicking onto the three dots on the right there. And if you click onto those three dots, there's a button that says uninstall right here, right? So if you have two versions of Photoshop, you could technically uninstall the 2020 and keep 2021, and that should hopefully keep 2021 stable enough so that it doesn't crash, because you're not using up as much memory for all the programs. So, but if it still crashes, then we might need to reinstall the program in order for that to work. Okay, so my recommendation would be to try to do that today. In fact, maybe just work on that right now as we're doing the warm-up question. And so then that way there's no issues or concerns or anything of that sort. So we'll go in that way. We'll go that way and kind of build it up from there. Okay, so I would start on that, and then we'll kind of get you rocking and rolling. Okay. And if that makes sense, if you give me a little thumbs up emoji, or you can type in that if that makes sense, that would be great. Okay, cool. So then that'll be helpful there. Okay, cool. So yeah, guys. So we're gonna make sure that these things are working. So we're just gonna dive in and make it work for today, and then we will start building up and setting up the programs and fixing any issues and concerns, things of that sort. Okay. Okay. So good questions overall. I will hold off on the warm up for tomorrow. So just because it sounds like we're going to have a lot of questions using the program for Photoshop. So what I would have everyone do for today is let's just to kind of start off and warm up a little bit, is take a moment this morning. We'll use like the next 5 minutes to just kind of work on the discussion post for the day. So we'll save a little bit of time there, and we'll do the kind of the follow-up for tomorrow. But since today we're going to be talking about that raster versus vector images, I'd like you to go onto Canvas and click onto the discussion post for the day. And I would love for you guys to just basically share and answer this question. What is some of the differences, or what is the difference between the top, which is a vector image, versus the bottom, which is a raster image? Okay, I know it's a very basic question, but I would love to kind of start there. Like, what do we know about what's the difference between what you see above versus what you see on the bottom in that circle? Okay, in other words, what's the difference between vector versus raster images? Okay, so let me go ahead and, oh, if it's not published, I will publish it. Thank you, Francesca. You know what's crazy about this is that even though it says it's published, it won't say it. I still have to push the little button for the module to get published, which is really a weird, it kind of annoys me. Like it should, the programmers of Canvas should just automatically like activate publishing if one page is published. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. If you were to try it one more time, guys, and it should post up again. and you should be able to see the posting here. So what is the difference between a vector versus a raster image? Okay, take a moment to type that into the chat and reply. Okay, and then we'll jump right into what is a vector versus what is a raster image. And we'll talk a little bit about that, do a couple of exercises, and then we will finally jump into like Photoshop basic tools and kind of go forward from there. Okay, so let's take a moment and we will begin momentarily. We'll give it about 5 minutes, okay? Give you guys about another minute or two to answer the discussion question. Okay. Okay. Another 60 seconds there, and then we'll kind of take a look. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of the replies. I'm just reading the replies here on my screen. So just kind of looking at this a little bit. Some folks are saying, oh, raster image is pixelated, not smooth, whereas vector images are smooth and has a distinct line or shape. Okay, that's great, Francesca, for sure. Vector image can be described as a solid image, while the raster can be described as pixels, for sure, absolutely. Analyzing vectors, there's a solid foundation of the color and image. Looking at a raster, the picture looks somewhat unstable without consistency, looking to be made up of pixels. Okay, that was definitely correct as well. Display, smooth, clean, size without losing quality. Raster, on the other hand, made up of pixels without sharp edges. So pretty much it looks like everyone has a fundamental understanding of what a raster versus a pixel is. Okay, now for those of us that are totally new to this, okay, and have never really understood the differences between the two, okay, let's go into it. Okay, it's always a good refresher to kind of understand this, but let's kind of talk about this a little bit deeper. Okay, so this is basically just a fundamental overview of like how computers create an image. Okay, so everyone has different computers. And some of us have Macs, some of us have PC computers. In fact, maybe we can get some clarification on that. Could you type in what if you have a Mac, and if you know your Mac version or year, could you type in what version of your Mac computer is? And if you have a PC, can you let me know, what if you have a PC personal computer, and what kind of Windows software do you have built into it? Go ahead and type that in the chat. But I want to get a quick little run through of like, what is the system that you're using? And you can send it privately to me too, if you're like a little bit uncertain, but what is the version that you're using? Okay. Because really it comes down to like two. And if you have a pad or a tablet, I lost the word there for a second. It just depends on what it is that tablets are now becoming a thing too, which is really, really insane. I'm thinking about purchasing my own tablet now on top of like a desktop computer, it's a little nuts depending. Okay, so we have Windows. Looks like we have a majority Windows folks, which is great. Windows 10 seems to be the preferred. MacBook Pros, we got a couple of Big Sirs out there, which is great. So everyone's in a different stage when it comes to the computers, okay? I will say that, just a quick little aside, that whenever you're in a graphic design studio, on average, I would say most of the time, okay, you will probably see these types of Mac computers behind me, right? The industry standard for most studios is a Mac, okay? Now, does that mean I've worked on a Mac? Well, if I've worked in a serious company or studio, I definitely have seen more Macs in my time. But I've also worked in places that had Windows computers. And these were mostly businesses that were not so design focused. They were more heavily business. So they just went with a PC and went with the PC route and used the computers for that. Now, both computers work. They're perfectly fine. One is not better than the other. But I will say that in most professional studios, if they're highly creative, multidisciplinary, and they do, very heavy design oriented work, chances are you'll probably see a Mac. But if you work for a company that does something outside of design, but they have their own let's say they make dental parts or something like that, and they have their own in-house and they have all the design in-house, which means in the company, then chances are you'll probably see more likely a PC. But it helps to know both. And when the college opens up, then the idea is that we try to get you into the classroom to work on a Mac so that you have experience using a Mac. But if you know both, hey, that's great. I mean, if you know PC and Mac, that's super helpful. I will say I mostly was on a Mac, and it wasn't until I started working that I had to figure out how to use a PC. And it was a lot harder to go from a Mac to a PC versus a PC to a Mac, I think. So it's good to know both. But so this basically talks about today's little lesson on vector versus raster, or vector versus bitmap, is basically for either or computer, okay? And I always remember this little guy when I think about Mac versus when I think about like just not Macs, but just when I think about vectors or rasters or pixels, I always go back to like that first like experience of seeing this type of graphic artwork, which is like Super Mario's, right? So I'm an older guy, I'm what you consider a millennial, and technically my first introduction to computer graphics was through these characters through Nintendo and things like that, which was like super obvious, made up of pixels, right? And today these computer graphics are absolutely amazing. They look like real people practically, and we've come a long way in the last 40 something years, right? So the technology has gone from this to something that looks almost lifelike, virtually realistic, very human. And we'll definitely get to a place where it's going to be very difficult to tell the difference between a computer generated graphic versus real life. Like we will get to that point, I know for certain, because the graphics are getting better and the engines are moving much faster and things are looking way more realistic, right? So what is this character, right? Like it's a raster image or a bitmap image. And if you have no idea what that is, basically a raster image is created using a little square called a pixel. Okay, and we'll take a look at that in just a few moments, what that means. But raster images are what we call those type of graphics that make up pixels, right? And they can be photos, they're typically photos, they're videos too. Now that we have video and Wi-Fi and fast internet, these pixels are now moving, and that's how we get our videos today too, which is pretty cool. And there's so many different formats available when it comes to photos and how to save your photos, and even video formats, which are indicated below here on my slide. But just be familiar with them, right? JPEG, GIF, PNGs, Photoshop documents, TIFF, MPEGs or MPGs, .movie files, WMV files, MP4s. You'll see so many different formats of how these files are saved, and it's really just a memory at that point. Like quality, the type of file you save is based on the quality of the image you want to keep, and also how it kind of like pushes out to the internet for other computers to see, right? Now they're in our pockets and our phones, which is pretty amazing too. And what are some of those features, right? Like I said, raster images are basically made up these little squares, which you'll see in a minute, but they're great for photography, they're great for videos, and the fancy term is that they're resolution dependent, meaning that you'll notice more quality issues on Photoshop, which creates raster images, than any other type of graphic typically. So this thing about pixelization and blurriness, you'll see that more often in Photoshop than anything else. And you'll definitely see pixels more when it comes to this program than ever before. The rule is also that more pixels means higher resolution, but really what resolution means is sharpness of image, right? So the higher the res, or the higher the resolution, means the higher the quality or the sharpness of the image, right? So more pixels, the more pixels you have, the sharper the image. But the opposite is true too, right? Like if it's small, it's going to look blurry. And then also, if you try to reduce something or make a small file, a small photo that is low resolution, bigger in scale, you actually reduce the quality of the image, which creates pixelization or that blurriness that you often see. And we'll see what that means in just a couple of seconds, okay? Now, Rasters are also known as those bitmaps. And basically, when we talk about a bitmap, think about it as these little squares, which are known as pixels, and each pixel has a certain type of color. So if you look at this image here of the happy face, right? If you were to take that little icon of a happy face, which you see that in your phone mostly, and let's say, or your computer, and you zoom in on that little pixel, that little image, if it's not high resolution, then chances are you're going to see the pixelization happen in your photo. So that blurriness that you see in the big part of the happy face, that's basically pixels. Those little squares that are starting to show, those are basically pixels, and each of those pixels has a certain color. Okay, and those colors have certain type of percentages of colors being mixed into it, right? So your computer is going to be made up of a lot of these pixels, which you'll see in just a few moments. Okay, here's a quick video to kind of give you a little bit of an understanding of how that works. Okay, so and it's a little bit of a commercial here from Apple, so let me just go ahead and like knock out the audio there for just a second. But generally what happens, and let me come back here for a second, hopefully it'll continue. But those are the RGBs. Okay, so red, green, yellow, those are basically, that square right there is basically one pixel, first of all. Okay, so let's say we zoomed into your screen of your computer right now, and we saw that little pixel 100 times magnified, right? You're going to see these little strips, these little lines that are made up of basically these little tiny light bulbs, so to speak, and they have red, they have green, and they have blue. Okay, and when you light them up, okay, they basically look like red, green, and blue, but once you start adding up the number of pixels, then your eye starts to mix the colors, and when they mix the colors, you start to see a picture of an image that looks like something else, right? And now these devices now have multiple layers, so the more pixels, the higher the image. But as your eye starts to see more and more of these colors, then they start to come together and they blend, they mix, right? Because it's light. And all of a sudden, what started off as red, green, and blue basically starts to like come into your eye and mix with all the other colors to create other images and other colors. And then they add up to create an image, which is text or writing or photos. And then those images add up to create photographs and high resolution images. It's really nuts. But basically, the computer is just basically pushing out these colors. But our eye, going back to what we talked about yesterday with Gestalt psychology, right? Our brains are basically trying to make sense out of all these colors. So we group them together into certain type of images and groupings. So those colors mix to create other colors. And next thing you know, I have a photo, I have an image, I have a video. Okay. And it's all based off your eye, right? So whatever your eye can see, it's taking all these colors and they're mixing it together to create an image. Okay. Does that kind of make sense? If it does, you can give me a thumbs up emoji. But that's basically what happens, right? Like where the computer is tricking your brain to see and mix colors, right? It's millions of them, right? There's so many of these little pixels happening at the same time, but it's just really amazing how our brains are taking all these colors, and when they mix together through the eye, they create other colors, and those other colors create images, and then those images add up to create shapes, forms, and ultimately they start moving on your screen to create videos. And that's how computers create these images. It's sort of a mix between our brains, playing with our brains and how our eyes see, and also and using light to create that image. Okay, so how does our eyes see color? Well, one is through light, and that's on the left there, and it uses red, green, and blue. So if you broke your computer screen or took a hammer and smashed into it, you would basically see those little RGB pixels, those little red, greens, and blues in some way, shape, or form, or like shining a little bit. And those colors basically mix, and that's light. So light is mixing to create different colors. So red and green make yellow, red and blue mix to create purple, right? And then green and blue create colors like cyan. and they mix, and all of a sudden these colors are mixing to create other colors to create even more greater images, right? Now, on the right-hand side of your screen, you're going to notice that there's something called subtractive colors, and that's ink, so to speak, right? So that's the stuff that we're used to when we're like 5 years old and we're coloring using crayons, right? We're using plastic or ink, dried ink or dried wax, which is a crayon. And when these crayons kind of mix over each other, what we're doing is mixing colors, and they're basically creating other colors. So that's called subtractive colors, right? I'm mixing ink, I'm mixing a chemical of some sort, dried or wet, and they're mixing to create other colors. So that's paints and things like that. But it's still being interpreted by our brain differently, right? Like whatever those inks, those colors are basically doing is that, you know, light from the sun is bouncing off that chemical, that liquid, that crayon, and it's bouncing a certain color or frequency back into my eye. And my eye can only interpret so many frequencies of color in order to interpret it. They say that there's like billions of color options, but our brains can only take a certain range of color. That means that there are colors that don't exist that humans cannot see, but they technically exist, right? So there's a whole nother world if you can go beyond the human sense, which is, I get woke and brain explodes when I think about that. But there's billions of trillions of color options that are out there, but our eyes can only see so much, okay? Because our brains can only account for so much information, okay? So like I was saying, you take a photo, right? Like this image of an eagle, and it looks like a photo, but if you zoom in on your computer and you go zoom, 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 or you take it on your phone and you zoom in, zoom in, zoom in with your photos, eventually you're gonna get a square with a color on it, which is the pixel, and that's how you see it on the lower right there in that orange outline square, okay? So it's amazing, it's awesome, and when you take those images on your computer and you see all those pixels, I mean, it adds up to literally thousands. You may have seen it when you buy your computer or you buy a screen, it says like thousands of pixels by thousands of pixels, right? Or 2,400 pixels by 30,000 or 3,000 pixels. What it's basically saying is that go from left to right horizontally on your screen, there is a number of pixels, and then going vertical, there's a number of pixels. You know, that times the horizontal times the vertical equals the total number of pixels, right? So the more pixels means the better the image, right? And that's basically what that number means whenever you're buying a computer. So the higher the number, the better the image, because there's more colors mixing at that point, right? And I don't want to get too deep into the math, but there is mathematics when it comes to some of these colors. Basically, pixels, these little squares, can produce 256 different shades of red, green, and blue, okay? So that's 256 variations, okay, of those colors. And there's 3 channels, those red, green, and blue, right? And they combine to create 24 bits of color, okay? Which is even more color options on top of that. And then if you take those bits of color, those channels, and basically, you know, multiply them, right? They can add up to literally 16 million or over 16 million. I think it's now even like much higher numbers than that, but variations of colors, right? So I could technically, if I take those shades of red, green, and blue, right? And I see different channels to produce those different colors, yeah, I mean, I have millions of different color options available. And that's just a small fraction of what's possible, right? Because this is what the monitor creates, right? So the screen can only create so much, but that doesn't mean that those colors don't exist. There's more colors that exist in the world, right? Just the computer, the engineering can only do so much on the screen, okay? Which is really wild, okay? So what happens when I go small to big? It doesn't mean more details, right? Basically, if I take 3 pixels on the left and I make it bigger, it goes from 3 to whatever number of pixels the screen can do. So it's still the same number of pixels on your screen that physically exist there that are built into the screen, right? But if you go from like 3 pixels to like, you know, double that or higher, the screen is just going to activate more screen, more colors, but it doesn't translate or sharpen the image, right? It's actually going to look blurry or what we call pixelated, okay? And that's generally how it kind of works, right? So if you have basically an image here on the left, which is like high quality, lots of pixels at a small scale built into it, and I go bigger or I print it out, then basically what happens is that if you go from like, small to big, it's going to look blurry. If you print that same image on like a piece of paper and it's lower quality, it also prints blurry, right? So the computer doesn't really know the difference between sharp versus clear, although it will in the future because it's getting smarter due to programming. But essentially what's going on is that, if you have an image that is typically high resolution and you go bigger, it's going to look blurry at some point. So the lower the number, the lower the resolution, the lower the pixels per inch, basically the blurrier it becomes as it gets larger. Okay. And we were saying in the warm-up, like, what is the difference between the top letter A versus the bottom letter A? Well, it's really comes down to the image, right? It's raster or pixel versus vector. Okay, some of you guys took my my Illustrator class. We live on the top here, which is the Illustrator vector stuff, and those images are created using lines or dots that create lines, as we learned. Photoshop is completely opposite to that, right? It can draw things using lines, right? And it does kind of blend a little bit of vector into it. But the core technology is basically taking those little squares and making it super easy to manipulate on your computer screen. So the difference between the two images is that, yes, the bottom letter A was pixelated or pixels and make those little squares that make the photo, right? It makes the image. And then a vector is basically just lines, dots that connect lines to create a larger image, okay? And it looks kind of like this, okay? The rasters is what is Photoshop, right? So it looks like photos. They look like high quality photos or 3D renders of images. They look pretty high quality, I would say, right? Whereas vector tend to look more like drawings, and justifiably they do look like drawings, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But Photoshop is so much about what it is, photos, and vector or Illustrator is all about drawings and illustrations. Okay, and we go a little bit into it because let me come back here. I didn't want to play with the image there. But we do definitely see a little bit of the differences, right? Like vector graphics are what we say are the opposite. And we won't go too deep into the vector graphics component, but in Illustrator, when I teach my digital illustration class, we do go deep into like what is a vector graphic and how everything's loaded. But vector graphics are basically, like I said, the opposite. They're stored in different file formats. Okay, fonts or the fonts that you download from the internet are typically what we use them for, not only, but they're very friendly because of that. And they're called resolution independent, meaning that if I go bigger or smaller on a vector graphic, it'll always look sharp and clear because they're not squares or pixels that are lighting up. They're basically lines. And those lines can be made bigger or smaller because all the computer's doing is just connecting dots. Whereas in Photoshop, it's lighting up squares, okay? And that's kind of the main difference there when it comes to it, okay? Like I said, vector is great for drawing. It's mathematically based, okay? And they are friendlier now for the internet typically. And this bullet point we're gonna have to probably delete a little bit later, but they are now internet browser friendly. And so the internet is now a lot faster to do that, and we can do it. But a few years ago, like almost 10 years ago, it wasn't, because the animation technologies were very different back then. Okay, so if you know this answer, hold off on it. But for those of us that are new to the class, can you guess which one is Photoshop and which one is Illustrator, meaning drawings? Okay, if you had to take a guess, okay, if you know the answer, don't give our new folks a time to answer. but what is it like? So if you're new, right, Jolene, right, Amanda, Myra, Maria, what would you say if you had to take a guess? Which one is the Photoshop? Which one is Illustrator? Okay, meaning one of these is created in Adobe Illustrator drawing and the other one is a Photoshop image. Which one would you say would be? Go ahead and type it in the chat and tell me what you think it might be. Okay, just to see what you might think it would be. Okay, we'll see in a minute, Jolene. Okay, Myra, middle photo. Okay. So you think the middle's a photo or Photoshop? Okay. All right. What about you, Maria? What do you think? What do you think it might be? Girl. Okay. And Amanda. Amanda, you're the photographer, so you've seen more photographs than anything. So which one do you think it would be? It does have an insight, could be Photoshop. Okay. So the answer is that they're actually all Adobe Illustrator. So none of them are Photoshop. They're all drawn, which is nuts when you think about that, right? These programs are, and what am I trying to say with this? Okay, these programs are so powerful that a drawing can look like it's Photoshop, and a Photoshop can look like a drawing. So they're not separate. They're so powerful that they can go either or direction. Okay, which is insane, because when you look at the drawings, right, it's like, well, that's cool. It's probably easier to take a photo, right? And that's true. And that's why we have Photoshop, right? Because sometimes we just don't have time to draw a photo. So these programs are all about doing things in a timely manner, right? Because as professional graphic designers or photographers or fashion illustrators, time is very important. Time is money, as they say in the business world. Your time is the most valuable asset. Everyone has 24 hours. Billionaires cannot buy more time. We all have the same number of time. We're equal in that regard, so to speak. But so you want programs that are going to do things efficiently and quickly. So if you're doing videos, or if you're doing edits, photo edits, photography related stuff, stick with Photoshop. If you're doing drawings and you want something that looks like a drawing or has a feeling of a drawing, go with Adobe Illustrator, okay? And you can take the Adobe Illustrator class, which I teach in the fall and spring. So, and you can learn the similar tools and see how that's built up, okay? So at the end of the day, what's the main idea, okay? Bitmap or Photoshop raster images are great for photos and video, okay? When it comes to vector, fonts are great and they can go up and down and they're scalable without going blurry, but bitmap, Photoshop, pixel images, they lose quality when you go bigger, okay? So that's kind of the main idea when it comes to it, okay? Now for a little bit of fun, what we're gonna do here for the sake of time is I'm gonna have everyone just kind of create, we'll use like one image too for the little bit of sake of time here. But what we're gonna do is take a moment to kind of manipulate some pixels, okay? If you've done this before, you can totally create a new design really quick, that's great. But what we're gonna do is that we're gonna go to a site called pixelart.com, and we're just gonna have a quick little exercise to make an image, okay? We won't worry about the principles of design, but we're just gonna create a narrative raster image, okay? And we're gonna use pixelart.com. Hopefully the site is still active for us. And we'll create a narrative image, okay? So let's go ahead and switch over. And this is just a quick little fun exercise. Probably take us maybe like 10 or 15 minutes basically. But what we're gonna do here is that we're just gonna create a quick image and manipulate some pixels just so that you guys can get a little bit of a feeling of how it all works and how it all kind of plays out, okay? So let me go ahead and put it in the chat. It's pixelart.com. And you can just start drawing. Okay, you do not have to create an account unless you want to save some images, and maybe you'll love it and you'll have a really great time creating it. But just start, you can click on to start drawing. Okay, so right here. And for this one, it'll basically create this little interface. Okay, and you can read the tools, like click next for helpful tips. Okay, and I think a 16 by 16 blank canvas will be okay to create your new drawing. Okay, I mean, can it create more? Absolutely. So 16 by 16 pixels. And what does 16 mean? It's 16 pixels by 16 pixels. So what that means is that when I create a new drawing, that these squares are the pixels. Okay, and I can use my pencil on my upper left hand side here, or my brush tool to kind of create a image. And I can use my color palette, which is on the lower right here, to select different colors to create an image. So you can create anything you want. You can create like a little happy face if you feel like you want to. If you want to create a little Super Mario, you can. If you want to use your cell phone or another window to kind of create another image, you can. But we're just going to create like a 16 by 16 image, okay? And then we'll put it up on this Padlet in about 10 minutes, and you can see all the cool work that other people have created, okay? So when you're done, you can upload it, and then you can put your name on there to set it up, okay? So you can create pizzas, rainbows, my goodness, hunters, gone from Hunter x Hunter. Some people created ice cream, donuts, a Pokemon ball, certain characters, bunny, butterfly, a paw. Some people got really crazy with it and went higher on the pixels to create detailed stuff. We don't have really much time for that. We just want to do a quick small exercise. So some of these are on top are helpful. And then you can create that. And when you're done, we could just share it and add it to the ever-growing list of cool stuff that we created. And you can upload it here by clicking onto the link and typing and entering your name, okay? Okay, so let's give it about 10 minutes, okay? Have some fun. Okay, I want to give you guys a little bit of time to create and share it, but we're just gonna take just a quick few minutes to set it up. And then if you've done it before, guys, then here's your opportunity to kind of style something up and kind of have some fun with it. So if you want to show our new folks some cool ways to kind of build it, that's great. Well, let's give it about 10 minutes to design it. And if you're still working on installing Photoshop, please continue to do that, okay? This is really just for fun and participation. So make sure that you're working on your Photoshop installations if you're having issues, and if it's on and it's working, drop me a direct message really quick and just let me know, hey, Mr. A, it's working now, or this is fine, or I'm having this issue, since we're getting very close to now launching Photoshop, okay? Okay. Take a few moments, guys. I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna go to the restroom, so I'll be back in about 5 minutes, okay? All right, have some fun. Okay, guys, we're starting to see a couple of designs come in. So looking very cool. Don't forget to also rate and like your classmates. So they'll always pop in on the upper right hand, upper left hand side, I should say. And then we'll kind of take it from there. Okay. So just wanted to make sure, and let's see, is 5 more minutes sound about right? And then we'll move on to the exercise following up there. So if it does, maybe you can give me a little thumbs up emoji. Just wanted to make sure if that's looking okay with you. Or if you need more time, maybe you can let me know how many more minutes you need more time for. Like, oh, I'll be done in about this many minutes. You can send me a direct message if you want. And then we can go in that direction too, okay? So, but they're looking pretty good. They're looking pretty cool. Okay, guys, so I think we're set. We're gonna move on. So if you're still working on it, you could always email it over to me, or you can share it on the link here. So but again, it's just this is like a fun exercise just to kind of get a little bit of the creative juices going, as they say. And and it's always open. So the Padlet is available. And it's there. So feel free to kind of share that image. So then that way we kind of know what you created and get a little bit of a feel and a flow for it. But it's just a way to connect the concepts so that we know specifically what what is raster, how does that look, and just get a little bit of a feel for it. So it's kind of like a pre-Photoshop in a way, but it only works for, well, as you can tell, obviously for pixels. And you can do some really cool things. Feel free on your when you have some time or free time to look at all these cool designs that students have created within the last like 2 or 3 semesters in the class. So it's cool. It's really cool thing. And I like pixel art. So pixel art is a style in and of itself. So a lot of students kind of gravitate towards it for different projects, and it's just something that kind of helps you kind of develop some creativity and just look at colors and shapes and forms and things like that with a much more simple eye. So overall, I think it's really cool. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Photoshop. Okay, now if you're still downloading, and I already know that a few folks have messaged me saying that they're done or they're still in the installation process. We've already spoken. So continue to do your download if you're still working on it. And so that way, at least it's working okay. And this exercise is a relatively soft start on just fundamental tools of Photoshop, okay? Tomorrow is when we actually get into it, and we actually look a little bit deeper into the program and start looking at some of the factors and the features involved. So it'll be cool. I think it'll be a fun start, and the exercises will be pretty straightforward to kind of develop your selection tool and techniques to edit images. So I'm looking forward to going through that and setting you up there. Okay. And if you have any questions about anything we have spoken to, well, let me know, and then you can send me a direct message or email, and then we can kind of go forward from there too, as well. Okay. So a couple of quick comments, like I was saying before moving forward. Tomorrow, I will kind of return to the concept of the principles of design. So generally, when it comes to principles of design, I know that students get a little bit, let me see if I can share screens here a little bit. I know that there's always going to be questions related to the principles of design because it's kind of a little bit of a rough start to kind of begin, okay? So tomorrow, what we'll do is that we'll start the day looking at the principles of design, and we're actually going to analyze the principles for an image. So I'll put that onto Canvas later today, but basically you're going to write one full paragraph analyzing this image, and it'll be, let me come back there. And I just want to evaluate and see how we're doing when it comes to the principles of design. So we will write about it. We'll talk about it a little bit more in depth, because today I wanted to focus more on the Photoshop issues and launches and things like that. So tomorrow we will definitely look at this component, which is this piece of art. And then specifically as we write, we'll be writing in the Jane Schaefer format. So if you remember, we had green, we had yellow, and we had 6 sentences talking about the 6 core, and then green to finish off. That's kind of like a structured paragraph talking specifically about what is the principle and what is the element that created that, okay? So we'll look at that a little bit more closely for tomorrow. It'll be posted right after class with the video as well of today's recording. But I definitely want to go deeper and just analyze and answer any questions that you might have. And also just look at structure as well to make sure that the writing is looking as best as it can, and we're kind of analyzing things. It's a lot for students because not only are you critically thinking about the design, but then you're also thinking on top of that of how to structure it. So there's a lot of thinking and a lot of writing and a lot of sort of organizing in the beginning to look at design. But the benefit is that this is literally how designers sort of look at their designs. You could choose to look at it passively, right? And be like, oh, that's cool. But once you do it enough times, this format, it's like for me, it was very passive in the beginning. When I started realizing like how other designers looked at designs and how they were able to come up with these ideas really quickly, I found out that they were actually doing this, which was breaking down those elements and principles of design almost like in their head automatically. So, I remember a coworker of mine that would like always have these designs. And then when I looked at her references, she always like looked at these amazing classic art pieces and then figured out a way to put like a Disney or Mickey spin to it, which was really fascinating to me. So I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So, there's the focal point, there's the inspiration. Oh, I see that artwork kind of being inspired. Okay, this is like this artist that's kind of influencing the work. So it wasn't so much copying as it was more like pulling from the balance or pulling harmony or using similar colors or similar shapes. They went really deep into just these elements and principles to kind of bring the design further. So when you can do this, then the book opens and the world is like literally open to you for lots and lots and lots of concepts and ideas. And as designers, we live in that world. So we always want to make sure that we know how to deconstruct. If I had to relate it to a car, you only know how to build a car if you take one apart, right? So what we're doing is taking apart this car, this design, and we're learning all about the tools, the parts, the pieces, and how the engine works, which are the principles and how that's putting its work into play. Okay. And this is a for life thing. Okay. Principles are not a 2021 thing. This is like a fundamental human thing that happens throughout history. These are the universal principles of design. They never change. And of course, line and color and elements, they never change. So just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up that tomorrow we'll be writing about this. Okay. All right. If you give me a little thumbs up emoji, that'll be great. So then that way I'll kind of prepare you guys to kind of mentally, deconstruct. And once you do it enough times, believe me, it'll be so easy. And so you'll start to kind of look at things and kind of build it up from there. Okay. Okay. All right, guys. So we are now entering into Photoshop Basics. Yay. Okay. It's really interesting when it comes to this stuff. I always get students always kind of get a little tripped out when they come into my class because they're always like, whoa, like this is like it took this long to get up to here. And my answer is always the same, right? It's like, yes, it is, because the techniques and all, technically you can learn this stuff on YouTube. But what you're getting from a live class is the one-on-one feedback, right? Like I get to see specifically how you're designing, push you towards a certain direction of a style, and literally give you that one-on-one feedback that you can get instantly when you're designing something, right? The thing about students when they look at recordings and stuff is that they kind of live in this bubble, and basically, you can do that for so long, but eventually what ends up happening is that you get to a place where you're like, well, how do I know this is good or not good, right? Or I have a huge client and the client wants to talk to me about something. How do I do that? We're relational, we're community, we're people that kind of work together in relation and community. And typically, we can do work independently up to a certain extent, but even the great masters had teachers and those teachers told them what needed to be improved in their work. So, in a recording, you don't get so much of that. Maybe you get pre-recordings and replies and things of that sort. But it's so cut and dry. And then when the time comes to work in a studio and someone actually tells you something to your face, how do you, like, some students kind of freeze up because they don't know how to interact. And so that gets a little awkward. And believe me, I've been there. And so we always want to kind of learn how to kind of work outside the bubble, as it were. And as COVID passes and things get a little bit relatively safe to connect and meet, we'll obviously have better ways to do things virtually, and hopefully find a healthy balance between what's online versus what's in person. So and besides, like you guys saw, if you're going to charge for this work, you're going to have to talk to somebody about your prices, because we all have things that we have goals, we have things we need to pay, bills and whatnot. And so, yeah, you're going to have to learn how to talk to somebody, and that's part of that process, right? So that's the benefit of being live, and that's helpful, and we'll get deep into that as we do more. Okay, so we're going to go over some quick introductions. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about the interface today, but I do want to start with sharing you guys a quick video as sort of an introduction. So let me go ahead and show you this video, and then we will begin with our lecture. So let's enjoy. This is a cool video that obviously is sharing to
Parfümök százai, virágok álmai, édes kis kesernyés, mézédes felejtés, rózsa és leander, karcsú kis üveggel, ó, elkábít. Mirha és mandola, kis helyre bezárva, orgonák, violák, titkos kis fiolák, cseppenként, permetként, próbálom egyenként, úgy elbódít. Most mind kidobom, torz tüköröm elhajtom, kabátom szárnyra nyitom, lélegem szabadon, szél repít, a nap hevít, néha megsebzett felhőkből sírsz, ha ég az ősz, új álmot szősz, szívemben édesen, füstösen, szédülten száll az élet illata. Parfümnek varázsa, szirmoknak világa, vágyaink hizzása, sejmeknek siklása, keletnek fűszere, búja kis meséje, úgy elbódít. Most mind kidobom, torz tüköröm elhajtom, kabátom szárnyra nyitom, lélegem szabadon, szél repít, a nap hevít, néha megsebzett felhőkből sírsz, ha ég az ősz, új álmot szősz, szívemben édesen, füstösen, szédülten száll az élet illata. Szél repít, a nap hevít, néha megsebzett felhőkből sírsz, ha ég az ősz, új álmot szősz, szívemben édesen, füstösen, szédülten száll az élet illata.
I don't know if anyone's ever seen this before. Has anyone ever seen it? This music video? It's from Europe, but it was pretty popular a few years back. I always like to start the Photoshop unit with that video because it it's first, the artist name is Bogey, and her video went viral when she kind of showcased what I like to say is sort of like the impact of perception when it comes to these programs, and everyone has a different response to it, right? I don't know what you guys were thoughts on that, but Photoshop is a pretty powerful program, and when you look at these things, when it comes to perception, we can alter perception, as you already know, pretty dramatically, right? And so, ladies, I think you've seen this, and I think you see this a lot on social media more so than anything. But I always like to start with that. And I think as I was watching it, I was thinking about me. I think that I'm slowly becoming sort of like this, sort of like a social, like sort of like a media activist. It almost seems like, where I'm trying to teach students like yourself not only what's possible, but also what to be cautious of when it comes to these programs and what they can do and the perception that we throw out there into the world. So I always like to start off with that. Let me show you guys one more video, and hopefully you liked it. If you did, little thumbs up emoji, just for its impact and its responsibility of bringing awareness to this program. But let me show you another program. This is a short video on PBS about Photoshop and all the different angles it works. So let's go with that, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the tools.
The word Photoshop is often used like, oh, you can just Photoshop that with the click of a button. And it's not true. It's really not true.
Photoshop is such an amazing tool. It changed the whole photography world.
Online culture would be a lot more boring if there weren't editing tools like Photoshop.
A lot of people feel that because you pass some work through Photoshop or digital, the process is not as valid, that it's gonna be with a click of a button, which is a big misconception. I feel like I do draw traditionally, but I just do it on the computer. Photoshop, there's nothing you can't create with it, especially nowadays. It's just like learning any program. I feel it's definitely important to experiment for yourself. Just go crazy with it. I think a lot of my work is fantasy, but photorealistic. It's that floating world image, and people seem to be drawn to that. Usually a production company or advertising company would approach me, and they would give me 1 or 2 images to work with as a start. With the Paul McCartney one, it was just him on stage in a black background. So I would have to take him and make an interesting illustration with it. I'd say typically 50 layers is normal, if not more. I'd say that would be the base. It's not just layers of random elements. You gotta have color balancing, and then you have to adjust levels. Just everything and anything could be a layer. 10, 15 years ago, I definitely wouldn't be able to create images like what I do today. I've talked to traditional artists before, and a lot of them are just kind of stubborn in trying it, or they feel like there'll be a cop-out if they do, and I don't agree with that. It's really no different than a regular traditional brush. It's just how you want to use it.
Before the digital age, we used to retouch prints, nags, hectachromes. Everything was made with hands. Now everything can be Photoshopped. So editors, they put a lot of work on the post-production. The first thing is I start with a basic shaping. Make sure the body, face, the hair, the finger, the hands, the feet looks pretty good to the eye. Then I work my way in to do some details in the skin, blotches, zits, bags and wrinkles, red eyes, crossing flying hairs. I mean, I can go on and on. A good retouching job, obviously, is when you don't see it's retouched. There's still some quality into it, some luminosity, some shadow, it's still alive. This is a site called Photoshop Disaster. People are just retouching without the eye of the retoucher or the eye of the photographer. There's poor quality. You don't have any structure left. We're really bombarded with pictures of glamour and perfectness. It seems like perfection has to be the norm, and it's pretty sad. I do believe those images impact our definition of beauty, but the trend changes and the beauty keeps changing over time. There's a saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, which I believe is true. I think we can separate between like the commercial beauty and the artistic beauty.
Photoshop has evolved along with remix culture in a very interesting way. It's become a dominant way to be able to illustrate their sense of humor or what they find is funny, what their ethics are. And images are much easier to spread than a blog post. Sometimes Photoshop memes can be a very simple way of communicating, but other times I think they can be quite deep and complicated. Casually Pepper Spray Cop, for example, was a meme that originated from this photograph of a police officer who was pepper spraying some Occupy protesters on campus. And a lot of people use this meme to make a statement about police brutality or to publicly humiliate Lieutenant John Pike. There's a really recent Photoshop meme called Thumbs and Ammo, in which movie stills having an actor holding a gun has the gun replaced with a thumbs up hand signal. And this one actually requires some very significant Photoshop abilities. And some people have said that it's an interesting way to make a statement about gun control or have an anti-gun sentiment. I'd say Photoshop has been empowering for people. It gives them the ability to humble celebrities like Beyonce's unflattering photos or politicians. And previously, people didn't really have such a way to get their voice heard in these regards. So these tools have really helped users to be able to interact with media and change it into whatever way they want.
The benefit is obviously the practicalness. It's faster, it's cheaper, it's better and better all the time.
Photoshop has become very important in terms of our visual culture, and meme culture is becoming increasingly important in online discourse.
10, 15 years ago, I definitely wouldn't be able to create images like what I do today. It's not possible.
All right. Okay, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that and found that helpful. But yeah, let's talk a little bit and let's actually get some your thoughts on it. So I'm curious to know what you guys, what your thoughts are on Photoshop, maybe what your experience has been, what you've created with it maybe. But I'd love to get a little bit of commentary and just kind of in the chat, share with me some of the things that you guys have created, or what are your thoughts about the program? You know, what do you hope to accomplish and create with it maybe? Or how much of a level you want to know. Share with me briefly what your initial thoughts are, and we'll kind of take it from there in just a couple of moments, okay? So let's take a moment to type in the chat about what your thoughts are of the program. Okay, these are some Good comment or good commentary so far? Okay, good commentary so far. Okay, so a tool to touch up images, photos, to create compelling works. Absolutely. When I read this, I always think about the just the way the tools are getting smarter and can actually look at details even and create things with even more intricacy and detail. It kind of shocks me a little bit as to like the level of detail that comes from it. I think it's a great tool, creative outlet that gives you endless possibilities in regards to how it's used. Yeah. You know, a tool is a good tool when it opens up the possibilities at a level that we can't even like quantify it. It's on when, I mean, I always say endless as well. Okay. More creative, see more in depth of the artwork. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of power behind that, behind the program and what can be done. So these are all really good aspects as well. So I like it. I think it's really good. And overall, it will challenge a lot of people too, because there are things about it that are so different from Adobe Illustrator 2 that we'll obviously learn in the program. Okay. Okay. So let's go ahead and just talk a little bit about just the Photoshop launching capabilities. So first thing, we'll start with the exercise. Okay. So today, what we're going to do is that we're going to be actually creating a vocabulary list, or if you have me for Adobe Illustrator, we're basically going to create like this sort of note card using Google Slides. It's the Photoshop tools exercise. And what we're going to do here is that we're going to identify and label all the visible and hidden tools in Photoshop. So the objective is to build vocabulary. And what we're going to do is basically label and identify all the names of all the tools within the program. So this is basically the exercise and the assignment for today. And we're going to start looking at these tools and labeling them. Okay. Now, the first thing what I'll say is that if you have a PC, you should hopefully know how to launch your program. So do you need to launch it? If you have it, that's great. You can go ahead and launch it, no problem. But if you have a PC, then obviously we have the launcher. We have your Adobe Creative Cloud Manager. You can click onto the Creative Cloud Manager and then open up your program. Or you can go to, if you have a PC again, your Windows menu, look for the program, launch it that way as well. And so there's another format there, slightly different depending on the software program of choice, but just wanted to kind of make sure of that. Okay. Now, when you open it, this is basically what the interface would typically look like, and the interface has not really changed much. It's been added onto, but in terms of the layout and where things go, it hasn't really changed much in quite some time. So you'll see here in red that on the top section, we have our menu and our options bar right at the upper left-hand side. So that's kind of standard with most of the softwares, and menus are always available there. Options bars are typically found below that. I always like to think of Photoshop as kind of like this Ferrari, where it's sort of like, you know, when you start driving it, it's really fast. You can do a lot of things. But then once you start looking at all the tools and all the things of that sort, you realize that you have a lot of them to choose from, and it gets a little intimidating sometimes, knowing where everything is and how it works and what it does. So typically that's where our interface is going to be, which is over here on the top. Okay. And again, this is basically just for overview and for understanding, right? We have our empty workspace area, which is typically where everything goes in the center here. So our files, our graphics would typically found in the middle when we're editing. And on the right-hand side, we have our panels and our secondary panel columns, which are kind of like these additional tools that kind of add on to the toolbar on the left. So they're like tools they're sort of like details of the tools without like overwhelming you with information, right? It gives you the basics, what they call the basics. But today we're going to be focusing on this toolbar on the left-hand side. And so that's sort of the interface. So it's kind of like 3 sections almost, if you think about it. You know, we have our top horizontal menu bar, we have your toolbar on your left, and then we have the panels area on the right there, okay? And then typically you have a couple more features here and there, but that's like the big part of it, okay? Or the main idea behind the program, okay? Now, when it comes to the toolbar, it's on the left-hand side of your screen, right? And there's a couple of ways that you can view your toolbar. The toolbar actually has lots and lots of tools. So sometimes it'll show up as 1 column. Sometimes it shows up as 2 columns, right? And it's often called Photoshop Tools, the toolbar, the toolbox. But it has lots of tools within that, and we'll see what the subtools are in just a moment as well. But there's even tools inside of other tools within the program, and that's a big factor in and of itself. So knowing where all these tools are at are going to be really important to your overall development in it, because there's just so many tools that come out of this, okay? When we're operating as well, when you activate like one tool, let's say, these other tools option or these other options bars sort of pop up on top of the screen. So don't be surprised if you click onto like a tool and then all of a sudden the top menu bar changes to something else. It's like a Ferrari, it's like this fast car, right? As soon as I activate a certain feature, these other things sort of come out in front of me. Or if you have a cell phone and you're using an app, right? As soon as I use this one app, there's all these tools that work within that app, right? You know, think about your tools as like apps, and that each one of those apps or applications have certain additional tools, features, and programs built into it. So, you know, Photoshop was sort of like the first sort of like, you know, it is an app, but it's kind of like the first like app within an app sort of company, because inside this one program, there's all these little mini apps operating inside of it, and those show up in tools, right? So your tools are like apps on your cell phone. So if Photoshop is like your cell phone, then I would liken it to tools as like little apps that you download to your program. And there's even apps or tools that you could even like download onto the program through the panels bar, but I'm not gonna get into that because I don't wanna start off with anything too confusing as we begin, okay? Our menu bar is typically consists of 9 menus. So when you open it, you'll typically see like 9 menus on the upper left-hand side, right? And that's like your file menu, your edit menu, image menu, layer menu, selection menu, your filter menu, view, window, and help, okay? And we'll see what each one of these means as we develop more, but they basically are set up in such a way, like any other program, that's like sort of like your main menu bar, so to speak, okay? And you'll find out that when you open up a menu and you see certain things like these little 3 dots next to a term, those are actually other little dialog boxes or windows that pop up within that. So again, there's like apps within apps. So don't be surprised if like you see a menu and when you sort of hover your mouse over a menu and then a window pops up and you didn't click it, or you click it and another option dialog box opens up. So it has a lot of different things, right? But typically, you know, be on the lookout for 3 dots on your menu bar. That means there's a dialog box that sort of opens up with that. You see a little arrow or sort of a triangle that's on the right of a word on the menu bar. then those are sub menus that kind of open up and give you more features. Again, our minds look for the simplest organization possible. So Photoshop, Adobe has designed this program to be as simple as possible, but as soon as you start exploring, it can get a little tricky because it's set up in such a way that it goes deeper into certain things, if that makes sense, okay? Then we have our panels, which are Photoshop panels, and it really gives us access to, like I said, more commands, more features, with different little like tasks within them too. So panels just do more for the tool, and it's just a little bit more, and it's like an app within an app almost. So something to keep in mind. All right. Workspaces is very cool too. On the upper right hand side, you'll see like this square, which with a little tiny like almost like a vertical rectangle that looks like a menu. And these are your workspace switchers. And basically in the program, you can actually sort of go into different places, and you can actually switch between certain workplaces. And what that means is workspaces means that like, oh, well, I want certain tools for 3D modeling. And so when you click onto like the 3D model option on which is here on the upper right, it'll give you like the tools specifically for 3D modeling, right? Oh, well, I want to do more photography and edit. Oh, well, then you switch over to the photography workspace, and it gives you the preferred panels and tools to do photo editing and color adjustments. Oh, well, I want to do more painting, and then it'll give you options for painting. So you can, these are the ones that are sort of like highly recommended by Photoshop, but you could even like create your own workspace and set up your own panels and make it customized to your work and what you like in terms of tools, which is kind of cool as well. So workspace is really great when you want to sort of go back to the basics, the essentials as it is, which is really what it starts off when you launch the program for the first time. But you can also go into other specific tools and even create your own panels and workspaces in your projects as well. And that's sort of a little bit more for like the super advanced Photoshop operator, okay? But we want to focus more on those tools, right? And as you see your tools, even the way the tools are laid out as a single column, they even have like certain features and purposes behind them. So for example, like certain tools are used specifically to move your graphics around, right? So that would be like your move and selection tools, right? I can select pieces of a photo or image, and I can move it around using these specific tools, right? And those are your move and selection tools, as it's called. And then underneath that, there's a tool which does cropping and slicing, right? Which is just a fancy word for making, the image tune up bigger, wider, change the image size, cutting images. So those are cropping and slicing tools that you see there, right? Then there's even measurement tools, like how big is a photo? What is the length of a photo? What is the length of this part of the photo? So we have measurement tools even built into that, which is kind of cool. And then, of course, the stuff that everyone is very familiar with, there's the retouching and the painting and everything that's sort of related to airbrushing and stamping and repeating. That's sort of like the magic of the program, as it were, where it's kind of like, ooh, cool, I could do all, now this is what everyone knows about Photoshop. We could do the retouch and the paint here, switch that there and edit it out. So those are kind of like the stuff that everyone knows, so to speak, is painting and retouching photos and images. And that's typically found towards the center or center of the toolbar when you see it, okay? And then we finish off with drawing and drawing tools or drawing and type tools. So as soon as you have an image, and let's say you've already edited it, do you want to add text? Do you want to use that pen tool? Hint, hint, for those folks that took my Illustrator class. The pen tool is now available. So now you can even trace around a photo and cut things out, right? So if you took my class or ever taken my Adobe Illustrator class, one of the main things I'd say is the pen tool is used in 3 different programs, or more really. But the primary ones would be like Photoshop, of course, InDesign and Adobe Illustrator. So that's where you find it. It's the pen tool is under drawing and type tools. And so if you can pen tool anything on Illustrator, technically you can pen tool anything in a photo. And now you can cut out real specific parts of a photo using that pen tool. So if you ever take my class, or if you take, or you'll learn that if you're taking my class, you're already coming in knowing a lot about this program, and that's in the pen tool area. So you're already coming in knowing something, which is great. So you've already been sort of prepared and getting to the good level of a prep. Okay. Then we have our navigation tools, and that's sort of moving, panning images, zooming in, zooming out, seeing things up close and personal, which we'll get to a little bit later. But that's generally sort of the tools there. And then of course, at the bottom are our color tools and color fills, which we'll see obviously in just a few. Okay. So there's a lot. I don't expect everyone to know all this, but just know that there's a reason where things go, right? There's a purpose behind everything in this program. There's nothing by accident, so to speak, right? The tools are there because we need something that can give us options, right? As I say here, the toolbox, also known as the toolbar or toolbox or the tools panel, is where Photoshop holds the many tools we have to work with, right? Selecting, cropping, editing, retouching, it's all there within your reach. And so some people can go all day working on stuff, not knowing what things are. And before you know it, next year comes around and there's new tools or new things. So every year, this program keeps on getting better and better and better. So as you enter this world of graphic design, I just want to kind of warn you guys that the learning never stops, right? If you think that, taking this class, you're going to be ready for life, well, in a way you will be, because you'll have the basics, you'll know how to design, and you'll know the most popular tools that Photoshop will never get rid of. But know that they will always find a better way to do something, and so your learning will always continue. I always say that graphic designers are learners, not by choice but forced, because you got to constantly keep up with the new tools every year. You gotta watch those Adobe launching days or those creative events where they talk about this new tool and that new tool to make your life easier and you can do things faster, right? The worst thing you can do as a graphic designer is that you just stay with one program and you never continue to expand off of it. I kind of felt bad. I had a student one year, gentleman, he's in, late, I think in his early 60s, 70s. I gave him props. I mean, I'm amazing guy, right? And basically, he came back to school to learn. But what happened is that the biggest flaw that he did was that from like 1990 something till like, right before the pandemic, or 2015, or excuse me, 2018, 19, he never really like practiced updating his skills. He worked doing, I think he was a photographer. He did the classic photography, developed it. It was like a small newspaper in Arizona, right? And then one day the internet finally caught up to this company, this newspaper, and it shut down. And then all of a sudden, everything he had known was outdated by like 10 years, right? And when he came back, I was shocked because he knew how to use a computer from 1990 something or 2000s, but everything that had happened, all the new stuff, all the new tools, he did not take that time to learn. He was set in his ways. And that's probably a dangerous place to be anytime in this field. The moment, and don't get me wrong, you don't have to get all religious about it every year, but if you're hitting 2 or 3, God forbid, 5 years without an update, guys, I will see you again at some point in the future, and I'll be like, don't I know you from somewhere? You're like, oh yeah, I didn't update. So be lifelong learners, right? And continue to check this program out. Watch the YouTube videos. Hey, if it makes it easier for you to take a class, and and you could take a class like once every 2 or 3 years, or every year, or go for it. Like, that's totally cool. We have students that come back that want to refresh their skills. That's totally fine. But as soon as you get to the 5-year mark, like you need to take a class to get refreshed. Okay, if that makes sense, you can give me a little thumbs up emoji. But I just want to let you know, like, be aware, because if you're not updating, then you can get comfortable. And I'll admit it too. I got very comfortable, and I went 5 years at the same company doing almost the same thing. And then all of a sudden, the economy tanked, everything went bad. Oh, we're going to have to, downsize, or I'm sorry, we don't have enough hours to give you. And now all of a sudden in an emergency, I had to like learn all these tools in order to do jobs with other companies. And so don't be in that position. Like don't do a job and then learn simultaneously how to do the job. And you're stressing out over paying bills or paying the rent. Like, do your due diligence and keep yourself updated, keep yourself informed as best as possible, so that you don't get caught by, I don't know, a pandemic and all of the jobs go away in less than 6 months, which no one could ever have predicted that. Housing crisis. It almost seems like every 5 years there's been like an issue that has occurred. And it's 2008, 2009. No, actually every 10 years. Here's another bit of wisdom, a little nugget for you guys before we go to the exercise. There will always be a crisis in America every 10 years. At least once every 10 years, there will be a major crisis. Plan for it, okay? Be ready for something like that. And be updated with your skills, charge a lot of money for your jobs, save money, pay off your student debt, student loans. Like, there will be a crisis every 10 years. And that, I think the first one that I experienced was 3 years after I went through college. So I graduated in 2005. 2008 was, the housing crisis. I learned the hard way. And then fast forward 10 years, we now have a pandemic, right? So every 10 years, there will always be a crisis situation. And as soon as you finish college, be ready for that. And even before college too, because some families were impacted hard. Be aware that these are things you have to be aware of, okay? All right, hopefully that makes sense. You can give me a little thumbs up, but that's some little life nuggets there. Just be ready for any type of emergency situation, period. You will know, okay? So just trying to set you up for success. Okay, so before we get you into this exercise, here's how this works, okay? When we go into Photoshop, okay, let me go ahead and switch over for a second. All right, so we can see some of the tools in the interfaces. So we want to get into this program. Okay, don't worry, you don't have to launch it yet. But basically, when you go into this program, you'll typically will see your home window and your home screen and things of that sort. Now, the new version is kind of cool because it has a few more bells and whistles and features, right? So even when you launch your program for the first time, it'll always show you like your most recent files that you opened towards the center. Hey, want to open this file, want to open that file. These are the ones that you did within the last 30 days plus, right? And it will always tell you on the lower right what is the file name and the number of days that you opened it up. So that's actually kind of a nice feature to have, right? You can always see your files in different formats. So for example, over here, there's an arrow, there's a list and a square. If you like seeing your files that you recently opened in a list, then you click onto the little list button that looks like little tiny squares with a little rectangle next to it. And you can see your files in list mode. So this is kind of nice for those folks that prefer to see things in list, as list. If you prefer to see things as icons or sort of like big bubbles of pictures, then that would be the second one there, which is like 4 little squares, 2 above, 2 below. And so you can switch in between 2 settings there, which is kind of nice. And what the program also now has available is cloud. So cloud files and cloud storage. And so Creative Cloud now allows you to have certain tools, okay, and how to save things under cloud documents. So on the left, there's a file here called Cloud Documents. And basically what cloud documents are is that you can save files onto your computer, or you can save files onto this magical drive, which is the Adobe drive or the Adobe Cloud drive, where it saves work. And we're going to try to live in this when we do our first exercises, because what's kind of nice about this is that then you can actually like share that file with anyone, like, I don't know, your teacher that's online across the city. And I can open your file and work with your design and see it instantly. So this is cool, right? Because especially now during the pandemic, we had to work at home, so we couldn't really store files onto servers and pull them, although you can in some ways. We can now put it onto a cloud drive, save it under Adobe systems, and basically share that with anybody anywhere around the world, which is kind of cool. And then they can open up the same file, make adjustments and changes, and then go back and forth. Cloud Drive is also helpful when you're using the iPad app. So if you have an iPad, the new iPad, Photoshop iPad for iPad 2021 is now linked to the desktop. So when you have your account and you are logged into your iPad on your Photoshop iPad app on your iPad or your tablet, it saves in the cloud automatically, and then you'll see it on your desktop computer as a visual. So it automatically saves, it loads, and it's cool because you can actually put all these files in one place and not have to take away storage from your iPad, right? So if you're ever thinking about getting an iPad Pro and you're like, I don't have enough file storage, well, no, you can. You can technically save it onto your Adobe Cloud file, but the more files you save, the more Adobe's going to be like, oh, we want to charge you for more storage, and that's how they make their money. They make money off the storage and like how many gigabytes or terabytes you're going to buy off the storage. But for class, we have a good amount of storage. I think it's like 100 plus megs. So for what we're doing in class, we'll be able to share our files. I can open it. You can open it. I can make quick little changes, instantly updates. It's awesome. It's like Google Docs, but for photo editing. Okay. So you can make your edits in there, which is awesome. Okay. Lightroom is basically the program which Lightroom Photos is basically another program for Adobe that actually makes adjustments for photos. So it's kind of like Photoshop, but it goes deeper into like the colors, the tones. It's kind of like a super advanced Instagram in a way, but it doesn't do anything social media related. We won't be going into Lightroom per se, but if you are interested in photography, which I know you are, Amanda, so Lightroom would be something to definitely look at in the future because you can actually make these really subtle adjustments to your photographs in Lightroom and the high quality photos specifically, and you can adjust, make edits, really play with the gammas and the levels, and at a level that is way more specific for the high professional level photographer. That Lightroom has now become the program for those super serious designers or photographers, I should say. And then Photoshop is where you edit it. So that's a cool program. And when you're a Rio Hondo student, you can literally download that program onto your system, and that's included free for all our students as well. Okay. And also here on the left, we have our Learn tab. And this is where you keep up with the Joneses, right? Or keeping up with the Kardashians. I don't know what it is now, but basically what it is, it's that Adobe knows that people want to keep updated and learn, but now they said, you know what, guys, we really need to start making it easy for them to learn in the program. So the Learn tab feature here on the upper left is now set up so that you can actually do exercise in the program, okay? And I know some teachers that do this, right? They literally will pull the exercise from that and do that in the class. I don't do that per se. I kind of started from scratch. Maybe I'll get into it a little bit later. Maybe we'll kind of explore a little bit. And in fact, maybe I'll use the selections tomorrow. I'll take a look at it after class and see if it's worth it. Maybe it will be for just reviewing and reading. But basically what it is that you can, it gives you hands-on step-by-step instructions. Okay. So let's say, I'm gone, the class is over, and you want to keep learning this program on your free time. If you go to the Learn tab and click on to the exercise, which is the tutorial, then it will actually open the exercise. You'll get this window that says Discover, and then it'll say, hey, start the tutorial. It takes 4 minutes, and you'll see like this little blue bubble that pops up that'll basically say, okay, step 1, you're going to go to the layers panel, which is here on the right-hand side. Okay. And can you see that a little bit? Can you see like the little blue bubble, speech bubble that kind of pops up? And then you saw like a little flashy blue line there, or like you'll see it right there. It's kind of flashing blue on the right. It's like a little teacher, and it takes you step by step through the process. After this class is over, I totally recommend you guys to kind of go through the steps, because Adobe is always updating ways to kind of like add onto it. so that you can take control of your learning, right? And that's amazing because they know that they don't want people caught in a sticky situation. And if you don't want to pay to take a class, you can take these tutorials and it's just as good, okay? Which is really, really great. And you can browse more options, more tutorials. There's so many: orientation, creative effects. My gosh, I mean, photo editing. I should have made my exercises based off of these, actually. Maybe I will. Let's take a look. Background transparent with quick actions. Like, it's pretty cool for what you can do with it. And it's hands-on, all skill levels, or you can even adjust your skill levels in that format there. So I love it. It's really great. And you can click back to home, go to the features, awesome stuff, and you will always have some availability there for you. Okay. So I love this program. Hopefully you will too. But those are just a couple of things that we see in the program here to kind of set you up. Okay. But as we launch, on the lower left, we'll just kind of open up the main menu here and essentially set up your screen. So let me see what's new. No, it already went over there. I'm going to reset to Essentials, which is right here. Okay. So what we're going to do is that if you see that little Create New button on the lower left, you can go ahead and click onto that, and you can create any window, any size. We just want to get to this interface, which is right here in front of you, and literally see the toolbar. Okay. If you see this screen, or you see your toolbar screen, or you see the toolbar, you can give me a little thumbs up emoji. I just want to make sure that you're here and the program opens successfully too, and you're set. So how many of you guys have your Photoshop open? Can you give me a little thumbs up emoji and let me know that it's literally open and it's pretty stable on your system for the most part? Okay, and I think Jolene, you're still downloading, so that's okay. We can always come back to the recording. Okay, and Natalia Maria, hopefully yours opened up too. So you have it open there, okay? But program is open, and you have your toolbar on the left, and then which is available for you here. What I would like for you guys to do is just basically pull the toolbar out from the left. And the way you do that is that you basically go to the upper left-hand side. And let me switch over so you can see it. Basically, what you're going to do is that you're going to click onto the little gray area here. It's a little tiny, so it's going to get real specific. You're going to click, hold the click, and pull it out. And you're basically going to see your toolbar like floating in the middle there. Okay. The next thing you're going to do is when you pull it out is that you're going to click on these two little triangles or arrows pointing to the right. Okay. And it has one, but you're going to click on it so that it's two. Okay. What you're doing is you're creating a 2-column view of your toolbar. Okay, so where the blue arrow is pointing, you're going to click onto that. Okay, so you'll hopefully we'll see. Let's see. Hopefully we'll see something on your screen in the middle here. Switch over. So right here in the middle, forgive me for that weird drawing, but that's your toolbar. Okay, so you see it as 2 columns there. Now, what's kind of cool is that if you hover your mouse over a tool and you're not clicking on it, you're just putting the little pointer over it, Photoshop tells you what it is. Okay, and it even says, do you want to learn more about it? Click onto the Learn More button about it. So it actually tells you the name of the tool. And it even gives you a little button that says, hey, want to learn about that tool? Click on here. So they've really made it easy for people to learn the name, the quick command, and also give you a little preview of what it can do and where you can learn more about it. So I love that, right? And for some it does. Sometimes you have to hover over it again, depending how fast your computer is. But you have all the names there, right? Okay, but here's the thing. Okay, we're also going to label the little tools or the sub tools inside of that tool. What are you talking about, Mr. Almena? Well, if you notice on the lower right here, so let me just draw this out, right? Okay, so like typically you have like your tool, right? So you'll have your tool here, right? But on the lower left, okay, where that little tiny square is, there's like this little triangle pointing right, okay? This tool that's right here, that little tilde or triangle is basically your marker, your visual, your cue that there's more tools inside that tool, okay? And the way to open it is literally you're gonna just click, hold the click for like 2 seconds, and a window will pop up that will, or right next to it, that will basically show you the names of the tools, okay? So if I had to switch back, okay, I'm gonna go to my, one of my tools here, and I'm basically gonna click, hold the click for like 2 seconds, and it already is showing me the tool. I see the move tool and I see the artboard tool, okay? I'll do it for the other tool underneath it. I see the tool here, okay, that is my polygon lasso tool. Okay, cool. But if I click, hold the click for 2 seconds, there's a lasso tool underneath that, polygon lasso tool, and the magnetic lasso tool. For this exercise for today, you're going to name not only the tool that is the visible one, but also the subtools underneath it, okay? You're gonna label all of them, tools and subtools, okay? And that's gonna help us to basically get a basic understanding of where the tools are. You're a designer. You need to know your tools. So and if you don't know all of them, that's okay, but you got to know where to find them. So at the very minimum, you got to know where to find them. What you're going to do for this today's assignment, because I'm going to give you some time during the class to do it, so we will conclude a little bit early, is that you're basically going to label all the tools and the subtools for this program, okay? So that you know where everything's at, okay? When we get into quick selections and selection tools, you're gonna need to know, well, what is a selection tool and where is it on the interface, right? So as we mentioned, so we're gonna need to know where that's at, and we wanna label them, okay? And that is found inside of today's activity. So that is posted. So if we go to Canvas, okay, the Canvas activity for today will provide you with a link, and that link will essentially show you this exercise, okay? So let me go ahead and retrieve and launch Canvas one more time, 178. Okay, gonna go down to day 6, Photoshop Tools exercise here at the bottom. Okay, you're gonna click onto that, and it's already set up so that you can click here to make a copy. So there's the photo, and there's the link right here, which is the make a copy. All right, it's already set up for you to make a copy. You want to be obviously logged into some type of Google account, hopefully, and you're going to start labeling your tools. Okay, now I already kind of gave you a little bit of a sample here, right? So I have a text box here, right? I have a little arrow there, okay? But if I go to my Photoshop and I look at the first tool on the upper left, right? That tool that looks like this sort of like navigator, that's called the move tool, okay? And if I click underneath, there's a tool underneath that, which is the artboard tool. So I have my move tool, I have my artboard tool. So I'm going to switch it over, and I'm going to type in move tool, click onto that text box. You can move it a little bit further out. You can change the font size if you want. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller to make more room for the subtools. But that's going to be my move tool. If you want to hit return and do a little space bar. Then I also have my move tool, and I also have the artboard tool. So artboard tool. Probably have to move that back a little bit more. And maybe I'll do a sub hat or just put it underneath that, which is the artboard tool. Okay. And then maybe I'll move the text box just a little bit closer so that it's related to that. Okay. So the line tool to draw the lines, you can copy and paste from mine if you want, or you can literally just go to the line tool, which is right up here. Looks like these two little dots that are connecting. You can click onto that, draw little lines. Think of this as kind of like a card, like you're making your own little note card, and you're just labeling the tools and understanding where all the tools are currently located. Okay, so we're going to be identifying all the tools within this exercise and setting it up for sharing privileges. Okay, so that's going to be the goal. Okay, the reason we're doing this is that we need to know where to find tools and also develop a vocabulary for the program, which is the tools in and of itself. So you don't have to know what they do specifically. We're going to learn it by doing it, but you got to know at least where to find them and what roughly what their names are. Okay, so that's going to be our exercise, and that's how we're going to set that up. So I will go ahead and share this link. Make it that much easier for you guys. Okay. And this is the Photoshop tools exercise. And when you click onto it, it's going to make a copy. And you're going to identify, and you're basically going to start adding the names of the tools there. Okay. Does this make sense for everyone? And if you have any questions, just go ahead and type it in the chat there. But that is our goal for today. That is the assignment for today, is to identify and label all the visible and hidden tools in Photoshop. Okay. Okay. Making sense overall, guys? So far, so good? Okay. We have about 20 minutes left till 12. So I'll stick around for a few minutes in case there's any questions, issues, or concerns. But if everything is making sense, then you can go ahead and start working on the exercise, get a little bit of a head start, which is always a plus. Okay. And then when we get in for tomorrow, we're going to start talking about layers, the fundamentals and the techniques of layering, and then we'll talk a little bit about what that means in the system and in the program overall. And then we're going to do an exercise, and those exercises are going to be our sort of selections tools exercise, where we're going to kind of give you a rundown of all the different tools, save and select, load, so on and so forth, and kind of building it up from there. So we're actually going to go through this process tomorrow and start going through our selection. As soon as that's done, then on the following day, which is Thursday, we're going to do a career goals photo montage or a collage of your career goals. And we're going to build that and design that in the program as well. Okay. Using some of the techniques that we do for tomorrow. So we're moving quick. Okay. And we're ramping up a little bit faster now, because now we're about to jump into that program. So everything is going to be Photoshop focused starting tomorrow. So we want to make sure you're ready. Okay. Okay. All right, guys. Go ahead. If you want are set, you can log off for today. Okay. You guys will be officially dismissed, and we will see you hopefully tomorrow. And if you're watching the recording, then please do your best to catch up with the assignments, because we pretty much have an assignment every day. So please make sure you're doing it. If you haven't showed up to class, probably is going to be the time to make sure you start showing up for those folks watching the rebroadcast. Question, are we labeling everything on the same slide, or do we create new slides? It'll be on the same slide, Amanda, but if you want to push it out, that's fine. But you want to make sure that you're labeling everything on the same slide. So you may have to change the font size a little bit more to a larger or smaller end to make room for everything. Okay. And that's all the tools, top and bottom. Okay. Everything that's visible there, you want to label. Okay. Okay. Very cool. Beautiful. All right, guys. Well, then I will go ahead and stop the recording. We will see everybody for tomorrow. And if there's no other issues or concerns, then I will stick around for another 15 minutes till 12. And then we'll go forward from there. All right. All right, guys. We'll see you then. Good job.